March Madness is all about the upsets, cause who doesn't love it when David slays Goliath, or when the little engine that could chugs its way to the Final Four. The truth about upsets is simple. An upset is only an upset to everyone else. The players at any unknown D1 school who will win a tournament game believe they will win long before they actually play it. They just have to turn the rest of us into believers. They call it madness for a reason, because you'd have to be insane to take Fairleigh Dickinson over Purdue in the first round. The biggest upset in history is official, where a 16 seed that wasn't even supposed to be invited to the tournament beat the Boilermakers and busted everyone's bracket across America. And now it's time we put some respect on their name. The FDU Knights, which is what they're called, are a reminder that the NCAA tournament is a showcase of the best college basketball teams in all of Division I. And even though you've never heard of them, it's clear that FDU is one of those teams. And the only reason they were overlooked is because David has always been much smaller than Goliath. Who they are is simple: a really good basketball team that perhaps is the definition of underrated. They were the shortest team on average in the entire tournament, with not one of their starters above 6'7". But their first and second team all-conference players are Dimitri Roberts and Grant Singleton, who are 5'8" and 5'9". And it's fitting that they were the ones to slay Goliath, because Purdue is not just the number 1 seed, but they have the National Player of the Year in a 7'4" center. And FDU beat Purdue with the players in Division I that nobody else wanted. Both Roberts, Singleton, and their leading scorer against Purdue, Sean Moore, were all transfers from the same Division II school, St. Thomas Aquinas. You can't make this stuff up, because beyond that, literally every player on their roster was an unranked recruit coming out of high school, but I'm starting to think they probably should have been. They entered the tournament with 20 wins. The biggest was against St. Joseph's of the Atlantic 10 Conference by 17 points. And it is a good thing the selection committee is determined to offer an automatic bid to every single conference in Division I. Cause the honest truth for anyone who actually watched the game is that FDU was more aggressive and more athletic than Purdue ever was. Yet they were the underdogs, cause nobody has been paying attention to them, not just this season, but for their entire careers. And now they've extended their stay in Columbus, Ohio through to the second round and cemented their place in college basketball history. So it's safe to say nobody, not even Goliath, will be overlooking FDU or any of its players anymore. Every small D1 conference has at least 1 or 2 teams that are legit. But these likely upset teams have one problem. They have to win their conference tournament just to get on the bracket in the first place. The Furman Paladins beat the Virginia Cavaliers in March Madness. And right about now, there are a lot of people in the state of Virginia who are wondering, where in the world is Furman? And what in the world is a Paladin? The answers are Greenville, South Carolina, and a Paladin is a legendary knight in shining armor. Believe it or not, I called this game, and I've got the receipts to prove it. Cause Furman was supposed to win this game, and these are the reasons why. Furman is a really good basketball team that plays in the Southern Conference, which we don't give a lot of respect. But it is a Division I conference, and they were the best team in the Southern by a legitimate margin. They had 27 wins entering the tournament, which means they're not used to losing at all. And if you don't trust their conference, that's fine. Just look at their non-conference play. they lost to Penn State by 5 points, who played their way onto the bracket, and also beat South Carolina, who plays in the SEC, by 19 points. And South Carolina beat Kentucky, who is now a number 6 seed in the tournament. And if that's not enough for you, they actually have good players for any conference. They have 2 fifth-year seniors who were first team All-Southern Conference, one of which was the Player of the Year in Jalen Schlosson. You may not have known his name before the tournament started, but Virginia fans will now never forget it. Now let's do a blind comparison of Furman and Virginia. If I told you that a team ranked in the top 10% of the nation in scoring and field goal percentage, and was an average rebounding team, was going to play against another, and that opponent was ranked in the bottom 20% in scoring and rebounding, who would you go with? By now, you've guessed that Furman is the former and Virginia is the latter. They call it an upset for a reason, because if you don't have it on your bracket, you are upset, because you probably should have. And if you did choose Furman, the legend of the Paladin lives on. The tourney has been showing us that just because you're overlooked by teams like Kentucky and the SEC doesn't necessarily mean you cannot play at that level. Princeton University of the Ivy League beat Missouri to book their tickets to the Sweet 16 in the battle for the jungle to prove who was the best of the Tigers. Princeton not only got the job done, but shocked America when they did. Cause almost nobody expected them to even win 1 game, let alone 2 in March Madness. But that's only because Princeton is much better known as Carlton Banks' dream school than it is for playing Division I basketball. But it's about time we put some respect on their names, because in the age of NIL, they still don't even offer athletic scholarships. Yet they took down 2 of the nation's biggest basketball programs, raising the question, how in the world did they do it? Because they're not just smarter than you, they're even better at basketball. I have to point out, this is not the first time Princeton has threatened to bust your bracket. Back in 2011, they almost took out the Kentucky Wildcats in the first round and only lost by 2 points. And in 2023, amongst their top 4 scorers are 3 all-state basketball players. And the only reason it's not 4 is because their leading scorer is Tosin of Woman. And he played for the British under-18 national team. And all those guys were only considered to be an underdog because they were good enough students to get into Princeton. The NCAA exists for student athletes to compete. And long before NIL became a thing, everybody knew that. The players for Princeton represent everything that the tournament was invented for. And entering the tournament this year, they had 8 losses, but only 1 of them was by more than 10 points to Yale. And they already got payback for that one by beating them to get onto the bracket, regardless of their conference or even their scholarship status. Princeton is legit. And no matter who you are, what conference you come from, or what you think you are doing, Princeton is going to be a tough out for any team that faces them. And whoever they play next will be hitting the books hard to study the game plan. Cause these smart kids from the Ivy League will test them with everything they've got. And now America knows that Princeton students are not used to failure, and that's both on and off the court. Florida Atlantic University is in the Final 4 of the NCAA tournament, and nobody can get enough of the Owls. In a historically unpredictable tournament, FAU survived and advanced. Everyone sees FAU as a Cinderella team, and that's because we've never really heard of them, but we should have. Because they are the best team in college basketball. In fact, they always were. And we simply ignored them. because we weren't used to seeing greatness wear an FAU Owls uniform. First things first, Florida Atlantic is a dominant college basketball team. So dominant, in fact, that their 9th seed in the tournament is downright disrespectful. The biggest knock on them is that they don't play in a Power 5 conference. But that's about the only logical explanation. They've won 31 games with only 3 losses this entire season. That's the best record in all of Division I. And those guys are a 9 seed, which is laughable to be honest. And I know what you're thinking. It must be because of their strength of schedule. But that's not true. Because FAU is in Conference USA, ranking 92nd in the nation on strength of schedule. That's just 2 places behind Georgia Tech from the ACC, and 4 places behind Notre Dame, who is also in the ACC. National ranking polls are incredibly biased, and Florida Atlantic is proof, because when the winningest team in all of college basketball can't buy a spot in the top 20 rankings all year long, you've got to admit the math just ain't mathing. And if you still need more evidence, consider this. FAU ranked top 50 in the nation in scoring offense, scoring defense, and field goal percentage. For the record, they were 57th in rebounding. If you average all those numbers and rank them against all of the top 3 seeds in this year's tournament, they would have been ranked first. That's ahead of Houston, Alabama, Purdue, Kansas, UCLA, and anyone else you want to name. Allow me to make myself more clear. FAU doesn't just win more than everyone else. They do it more efficiently. You can hate on a team because of their conference if you want to, but I'm starting to think the selection committee has it out for FAU. To give the benefit of the doubt, they probably didn't know who they really were either, and that's another reason why they're so disrespected. All of their players were never supposed to be this good. According to 247, they've never even had one recruiting class in the top 100 to fuel their roster. In fact, they only have one 4-star recruit on the entire team, and that's Jalen Gaffney, who transferred in from UConn. Their roster is filled with players whom 247 considered to be unranked. That means quite literally, they never saw them coming. And we normally pay attention to small schools when they have one standout player. But FAU didn't have that either. They didn't need one. They have 9 players who average at least 15 minutes per game all season long. And none of their players average more than 14 points, 7 rebounds, or 3 assists. Their leading scorer, John L. Davis, was actually the 6th man of the year in the Conference USA and first team all-conference. I'm not making this up. If you are gonna write a movie about a basketball team that sacrificed for the greater good, you would be making a movie about FAU. They're practically the perfect team, even if they don't have any of the perfect players. Cause even now, I doubt that almost any of the top seeds would have traded even one of their starters for anyone on FAU. But who cares? Cause they win basketball games. Apparently when it matters. I for one have to apologize to FAU. Cause I knew they were good. I just didn't know they were this good. And against my better judgment, I counted them out, just like everyone else did. Cause the selection committee suggested that I should. As a recruit, you have to find your best fit school. Cause big name programs aren't the only place you can accomplish big things. When a coach reaches out, you have no way of knowing if they're the next Lehigh University, the next Florida Gulf Coast University, or even the next St. Peter's University. And remember, it isn't really an upset when you win, because the only reason the coach is recruiting you is because you've already proven that you are a winner. You just have to turn the rest of us into believers. And trust me, I'll be watching when you do. I'm Coach Rob, and thank you so much for watching this video. And if you want to see more content like this, then please like and subscribe.